Hi, I'm back with the last half of strategies good readers use. We've covered 4: going left to right, reading for meaning, self-monitoring, and matching one-to-one. And now the 5th one is they need to learn what we call the constancy of print. That means that words are always the same. If this is the word the, it's always going to be the, T-H-E. It doesn't matter whether it's big, little, what font it is, what color it is. It's always going to say the same word. I have a funny story in my program. I don't remember, about 15 units in, they have already read a book about Little Bear, and it's 8 pages, and it has about a sentence or 2 on each page, and that's easy, and they've read it. So then the next unit, what I do is take those words from that book and put it all in a paragraph. So all 8 sentences are all together. And the first one, it has Little Bear's picture up there, and it's in a fairly big font, easy font. But I say to the child, now this is the same words that were in the Little Bear book, only they're all put together. So let's read this. Do you think you... And the child says, I can't. I don't know how to read that. Invariably, they will say that because why? It looks different. So I say, well, you know what? It really isn't different. Let's try it. And so they read it, have no problem with it once they're into it, and they get really excited about they read that. Then I have another page where I say, now let's read it, the same words again, and it's smaller print and in a different font. And invariably, they will say, I can't read that. And then I'm chuckling by that time because it always happens. And then we try it and they find out they can. I do that with 3 different fonts. Eventually they learn that it doesn't matter what it looks like, the size. T-H-E is always the, no matter what. But they have to learn that. If they don't, then a lot of times they will struggle because it looks different to them. In this book, it was different. Or a lot of times they know it on the sight word card, the drill card, but they don't know it in the book. They have to learn that it's the same. And we, as we're teaching, need to make those connections. When they come to a word and they stop, it's in a book, and they say they don't know it, then I usually say, oh, what was it here? Oh, it was that. Then it's the same thing here. And they begin to learn that, but that's something they have to learn. They also need to learn that constancy of print affects book reading a lot of times because, like, for example, I had a little boy one time and I was checking his reading and I said, here's a book, it's called What Am I? And he saw that. We opened the page and the very first page, the words were, what am I? And he had no, he was spitting and sputtering around. See, it was here, and it was in dark print on the title, and now here it is here in a little bit smaller print, and he didn't carry it over. That's because he still hasn't learned how to do that, but it's not going to change. And then the next page, when it says that, just because it's on another page, you don't have to work at it again. It'd be easier to just carry it on over. Those kind of things need to be carefully taught, and then the children know that. Number 6, children need to know that when they're reading, if they know a word, they just say it. Now, you may have heard on some of my other workshops this same thing, but I'm going to repeat it. There's 1,000 words in the English language that if that child knows those, or you, if you know those 1,000 words, you're going to know 95% of everything you ever read. Now, my pea-brain says if I know 95% of the words on this page, it's going to be easier to read than if I don't know those. So they're important. If you don't believe me, you can go online, Google 1,000 most used words in the English language. You'll get the list. And you'll see that they're listed in order. I think they're usually in sets of 100. And they're listed in order of how frequently they're being used. So, of course, the first word is the, because that's the most frequently used words. Now, they do change a little bit over time because our vocabulary changes a bit, but not much. So, if you know the first 25 of the words on that list, you'll know 1/3 of everything you ever read. If you know the first 100, that's half of everything, and it goes on up to 1,000 is 95%. So those words are important to know. But again, you got to know them not only on a sight word list or on a card, but you got to transfer that over to easily saying it in print. Now, I will tell you, I think I have time, I'm going to tell you a funny story. When I was teaching years ago, first grade, and I was teaching hard for these strategies. And I was teaching that when you make a mistake, you stop, you correct it, that's wonderful. And then one day, we were having a parent-teacher conference with this little girl and her mother. She was a pretty good little reader, and so I said, oh, bring a book up and read for your mom. She brought this book up, in the first 2 or 3 pages, she is making mistakes and correcting herself all over the place. And I stopped her after 2 or 3 pages, and I said, sweetheart, what are you doing? I said, what is this word? And she told me. I said, then why didn't you just say it? Well, it's good to correct, So in her mind, making a mistake and correcting was wonderful too. So she was just doing a lot of that because she thought that'd get a lot of praise, I guess. And then I had to say, but remember that if you know it, you say it. That's even better than stopping and correcting it. So then she started doing it. That's what good readers do. They know a lot of words and they are able to say them. That helps them phrase, which then helps them comprehend. It's just critical to know those. And I remember when all the years I was teaching in school, if you go to any librarian, they're going to pretty much have a rule of thumb. Most of them will say, if you don't know whether this book is too hard for you, talking to children, open it up, pick a page and read it. If you make more than 5, they used to have a big hand. If you make more than 5 errors, if there's more than 5 words you don't know, it's too hard. So that says you better know a lot of words, because otherwise you can't read for meaning. So good readers know that and just learn to say them. But if you don't know a word, number 7, another strategy they use is, if you don't know a word, you never just stop. You say the first sound or the first 2 sounds, or the first 3, you go through, you say the first part and think what makes sense. I will guarantee you that most children only need to say the first 2 chunks going left to right. If they're thinking about what makes sense, they'll get that word, it'll spill right out of their mouth, and then they just check it to make sure it looks right. But they have to not just stop. I used to have struggling readers who would come to me, and when they'd come to a word they didn't know, they'd stop and look at me. They had been taught that somebody else will monitor for me, and if I don't know it, they'll give it to me. Well, I said, no, I can't help you until you say at least the first sound and think what would make sense. I used to keep a bag there and just put a sack over my head sometimes, saying, the word is not written on my face. You have to say the beginning sound and think what makes sense. When they did, guess what happened most of the time? They said the word. But that's what good readers do. Good readers, number 8, reread after a problem. If they've had to figure out a word or something, they'll go back and pick up the phrase or pick up the sentence and move on, because they're getting the meaning back. Anytime they have to, it happens that way. Of course, I do that too. If I'm reading a book and something interrupts me, it might be in the middle of a sentence, and I could put a mark there. But when I go back to read that book, I'm not going to start right there in the middle of the sentence. I'll go back and pick it back up. I pick up the meaning. That's what good readers do. Good readers sound like they're talking. And that means they put words in phrases. They don't put space between every word. Now, that whole idea of putting space between a word, by the way, is a learned procedure anyway. When you first get a reader, if they're going to write... let me think of a good example. Is it time to go to lunch? And if they were going to write that, they might write is it as one word, because they don't know yet that is and it are 2 different words. Those are learned. But once they learn that, then they have to learn that even though there's spaces between those words, when we talk, we put some words together. But there's a skill in that, people. You don't just put any... Oh, I hope nobody in my hometown hears this. But there is somebody on radio who advertises something. And I don't understand why they're doing this, but she sounds like this. Come on down to see us at so-and-so Ford, and we will show you lots of it. She phrases three. My daughter's back here live. She phrases 3 words together all the time, but they don't make sense. That's not how we talk. Sometimes we only phrase 1 or 2. Sometimes we phrase 8. It goes by the meaning, and we learn how to do that. Children aren't born knowing that. And so, for example, in my program, I use a lot at the beginning of cut up sentences, where we put a sentence from the book or something they've written, cut them into individual pieces, lay them out with space between them, and then show them how we put these, how it sounds if we put it together this way. How does it sound if we put it together another way? And you learn that there's a way to put words together that makes sense. Good readers know that. Good readers use expression. And you know what? If you really think about it, even when you're reading to yourself, you're using expression. In your head, it is not just like this, that isn't what you're doing. You're reading the way you talk. Although I will say that some of us read faster than we talk, but we still do it the same way. You're still phrasing. Good readers, number 11, good readers use punctuation. They understand that these are talking marks, and this is a comma, it means pause, and this means a question, and this means to stop. I'm appalled at how many curriculums don't teach that until later on in the program. But if you give them books to read and you're not teaching them about those little marks, guess what you've just taught them? To ignore those little marks. They don't mean anything. That's not true. Every one of those little marks are as important as the letters. So good readers understand exactly how to use those. If you don't understand the quotation marks and all of that, and how paragraphs work different, within about a page or 2 of any chapter book, they're going to be totally lost. I don't know who's talking and who's saying what to who. They don't understand. They don't know. If they don't stop at the pauses and at the end of sentences, but they just keep going on, which I have seen a lot of, it's going to lose its meaning. So good readers know how to do that. And number 12, the last one I want to talk about, is good readers get into the story. They're commenting on the story. They're making predictions as they turn the page. They're looking at the pictures and observing and thinking. They're making connections to other things. They're laughing if it's funny. I don't know how many times in my career I not really got into it, but I had a discussion with teachers when I would hear them, a child would be reading out loud to them, and the kid would want to say something about the story or laugh, and she'd say, come on, let's go, read the story, stay on task. And I would think, what is the task? Isn't the task getting into the story? So why are we telling them that's not allowed? Children must get into the story, but they need taught how to do that. I had a little girl, this is a good example, a little Alexa. She's actually on tape doing this, I think. But we were reading a story, and I had been helping her to understand that, we're going to make comments and wonder, and as we turn the page, I wonder what's going to happen. Or that was kind of like when I was a little girl. Trying to help her to understand, you got to get into that story. And she's reading a page long. At the end of the page, she said, my dad and I are going fishing next weekend. And then I had to say, I'm glad, Alexa, but that doesn't have anything to do about the story. And so I'll talk about that at the end of the book, but during the book, we're just going to talk about things that are going on in the book. She didn't know that, but okay, so that's cool. You got to teach her how to do that. You got to teach them how to what we call feed forward. As you're turning that page, as you're reading along, you're making prediction. Now, I love to read books that are fiction, but they're inspirational and they're historic. They're usually set back 100 years or more. I love those books. My grandchildren tease me about the books I read, but I love them, and I can read one in about an hour. But I'm always thinking, I think she's going to fall for him. I think this is a match. I think, yeah, you're always thinking that. Sometimes in the middle of a book, I even think, why am I reading this? I know what's going to happen, but I still read it. But you make comments and predictions. Sometimes when I'm taking what we call a running record, and I think I'm going to try to get a workshop on about how to take running records. I teach it in my program. It's kind of a shorthand way of when somebody's reading to me, I can check what they're doing. But if they chuckle or laugh about something somebody does funny, I mark that down. I give them a star on that. That's good. I want you to catch it. If you're reading Amelia Bedelia, I want you to see how silly she is. And I want you to delight and laugh. But we have so often given children the impression that reading is just saying those words. Stay on task. That's not the goal of reading. The goal of reading is to pick that book up and enjoy it. Get into it. That has to be taught. Now, I'm going to stop there. That gives you about 12 of the strategies. And here I have to add another teaching, and I may even put another workshop on about the power of praise, but I want to add it here. When you're teaching your child to read, there is nothing more powerful than praise. And often I think we parents, because we're thinking about how it was when we went to school, we're thinking that teachers correct. You always are pointing out what's wrong. That's what I have to do. And I'm saying, throw that out the window. That's not true. Your most powerful tool in teaching is praise. If when I'm learning something, I don't care what it is, if I'm trying to learn how to plant a garden, if I'm trying to learn how to sew, if I'm trying to learn Spanish, whoever's teaching me, if all they ever do is criticize what I do wrong, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll quit. I just will. And so would you. We need positive reinforcement, but it has to be the right kind. And I want to talk to you about it. First of all, you need to praise often. Okay? Often. You need to praise first. In other words, when a child's done reading a page, if there's some corrections that have to be made, you always start with some praise, then make your corrections in teaching. Because, and you always want to do about 2 positive things to the 1 negative you have to share. That makes it easier to swallow. It's kind of like putting a pill with sugar. It makes it easier to take. So you want to do it first. But the other piece that's so critical is you've got to learn, if you want it to be powerful, you've got to learn to praise specifically. If a child's read something to you and you say, that was really good, or I'm proud of you, or wow, or wonderful, or whatever it is, that may make him feel good, but that doesn't teach him one thing. But if you say to him, and I'm going to go back to these strategies, because now, see, these strategies means this is what good readers do, so this is what I want to teach him to do. So you go back and you say to him, I love the way you read that. You sounded just like you were talking. You sounded, that was wonderful. You put those words together. I love the way you stopped when you made that mistake and you fixed it. That was so good. I'm so proud of you. What are you doing with that? That's powerful. That tells them, then I'll do that next time, because now I know what to do to get their praise. Or if I use the word what good readers do, I love the way you, let's just pick something, I don't know. I love the way when you came to that word you didn't know, you looked at the picture, you thought what made sense, you said the first sound. That was so good. That's what good readers do. See, I use that phrase a lot. And that helps them to know that's what good readers do. That's what I want to be a good reader. And now I know how. I cannot tell you how many times I've worked with a struggling reader and all they really needed was for me to go over these and tell them what good readers do. In my program for struggling readers, that's the first thing we do in lesson 1. I'm going to show you what good readers do. And now I'm going to watch for it. I'm going to praise for it. I'll teach it if you miss it, but I'm going to praise for it. But I want you to know it. That's a piece that's missing in many curriculums. But if you can learn how to praise first, before you criticize, praise. If you can learn to praise often and praise specifically, it'll be powerful. Just powerful. Now, in Burton Reading, all of these strategies are taught from the very beginning. In Burton's Solutions, Reading Solutions, which is for struggling readers, we go back and reteach these on easy text. These are critical pieces of learning to read. It's what good readers do. I hope this has been helpful.